Hello everyone, welcome back to Brain Muffin at the Movies, and it looks like the MCU fans are really irritated at Sony. So Sony and Marvel apparently are going Splitsville over Spider-Man. Sony does own the rights to the movies, and I just heard about this. I don't know, there's a Boycott Sony thing going on, there's hashtag Boycott Sony, but what I don't know is really who's to blame. Now, what this really, I think, means in the MCU is it really look to me like after Endgame, and in particular, and what we see with Far From Home, that Spider-Man was set up to be the new Iron Man as far as role in the Avengers. I really think that with Thor kind of going off with the Guardians of the Galaxy, you're going to see Iron Man kind of be replaced by Spider-Man, and that kind of character. He has similar, the humor and all that. And then Captain America is going to be replaced by Captain Marvel. Now, I know there's Captain and Man. I don't know if that was intentional, but now if this is true, and it looks like it is, and it's permanent, which who knows, Sony loses enough money that they might get their head out of their butts. This really throws the MCU into a wrench for Phase 4, and it also means Captain Marvel is really the face of the MCU Phase 4 by herself. And it'll be interesting to see, one, if Brie Larson has the acting ability to pull that off. She is an Oscar award-winning actress, so I would think so. And if the writing can do it. Captain Marvel was pretty much a meh of a movie, and very shoehorned. Looks like it was probably planned out about 3 years ago, as opposed to probably 6 or 7 years ago when that phase was all planned out. And will Spider-Man's absence make a big dent? I think Phase 4 is going to really be, I think Guardians of the Galaxy and what would have been the next Spider-Man movie, or Spider-Man with the Avengers, would probably be decent. But I think many of these movies, I know there's a Wasp movie, there's a second Black Panther movie. I think my prediction is that they wouldn't do well just because the audience is a bit beyond those. We're kind of tired. It's been 11 years. It's kind of tiring. So we'll see. So the internet was so this is from movieweb.com. We have the internet has been ablaze by the news that Sony Pictures and Disney are reportedly parting ways on future Spider-Man movies. This has led the hashtag Boycott Sony to begin trending on social media, as many fans of Marvel MCU are not pleased. So first, here's what happened. A report indicated that Sony, who still owns the rights to Spider-Man and his rogue gallery of characters, couldn't reach financial terms with Disney and Marvel over further sequels. Okay. As such, Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige said he is said to no longer be creatively involved in the future of Spider-Man movies, and Sony would press forward with 2 solo sequels on their own, with John Watts attached to direct, and Tom Holland set to reprise his role. Okay, so some of the memes that are going around are already inaccurate. Tom Holland is going to play Spider-Man in 2 more movies, but standalone, which is fine. Some tie-ins, because some of the standalone movies, once we had the Avengers, didn't make a whole lot of sense, maybe to introduce a character, but anyway. However, the implication is that Spider-Man could no longer be connected to the MCU. This means that Peter Parker can't appear in any future MCU movies following Avengers Endgame, nor can the inevitable Spider-Man 3 have any real ties to the MCU. I guess you could have mentions. You could still set it in that same universe, just no one shows up. Or something like, hey, I could really use the Avengers right now. I look at this as in the Arrowverse, one of the later, one of the more recent, I should say, seasons of, it's not called Guardians of the Galaxy. It's, something, Legends of Tomorrow. I know I'd get it eventually. Sorry. See, if I make a mistake, then people are going to be all up in arms about it. They were supposed to be part of a tie-in, but for some reason they weren't, and they actually made a joke about it. So I don't know what happened there. I watched these seasons well after they're off. They're on Netflix. Who God knows how long they are, and I tend to blast through them because I can't stand them that much. So it's worth mentioning that some conflicting reports are floating around right now. Some reports say that Sony and Disney could still reach a deal. And that part of the issue has been boiled down to producer credits. The consensus seems to be that Disney wants a bigger slice of the pie. See, I had a feeling that the boycott Disney was misplaced. And if this part is true, that Disney wanted a bigger slice of the pie. And this coming on the heels of information that Sony may have been cooking their books. I mean, not Sony, but Disney. They may need cash and they may need it fast. And, you know, I know this would be a couple of years, but if Sony's footing the bill and they get a bigger cut of the pie, then it's fewer expenditures for Disney. And said to have offered Sony, said the studio said to have offered Sony with terms with a 50-50 co-financing deal on the future installments. As of right now, Marvel Studios produces the solo movies, but only ends up sharing only 5% of the profits. Okay. Sony didn't agree to those terms, and it has led to a stalemate. Okay, so Sony ultimately failed with Amazing Spider-Man reboot. Yes, they did. Led by Andrew Garfield, and that, you know, those were, this is what, you know, people talk about movies made by committee. Sometimes the committee gets it right, but Amazing Spider-Man, they got it wrong. And I think that was also I don't understand how studio execs do not know how to make movies. Since then, not only has Spider-Man Far From Home and Homecoming have huge hits, but the movies Tom Holland appeared in alongside his fellow heroes, Captain America: Civil War. So he was in 3 MCU movies. Sony has had luck flying solo on the animated Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse. They did, and the spinoff Venom, which surprised me that actually did well. Both sides easy to say that they're so they can't come to terms. I would take it on both of them. I would not. I would say boycott Sony, boycott Disney. Go both ways. They can't agree over, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars. And here's a long slew of people on Twitter who took to Twitter about it. Anyway, so that's Ryan Scott. So let's flip over quickly to IGN.com and see if we get any kind of a different take. As many fans, Sony's not agreeing to new terms, so angry that several of them claim they'll boycott future Sony films and even Sony's PlayStation 4 over the deal. Yeah, I doubt that. Across the boycott Sony, again, I think it's misplaced. This has less. So this is about the boycott. Some fans are going beyond simply saying they're boycotting Sony Pictures, claiming they'll boycott. Yeah, I doubt that. On the other hand of the spectrum, many fans have noted that while they may be down to boycott Sony films, boycotting their PS4 is off the table. Turns on PS4. Change.org keeps Spider-Man in the MCU. So not a whole lot of information there. This article is from digitalspy.com. Participants and threatened to boycott Sony over Spider-Man. And Drew acknowledged that something causes outrage on the internet. A petition will spring up that did. And so this is more information about the petition we already saw. Cannot in good faith stand by while Spider-Man, and at least I spelled it right, and his fans around the world become collateral damage. Spider-Man is in the MCU has brought some of the best moments in modern cinema history. So, Sony, you must go out on this property. So if Marvel was footing the bill and only get 5%, and that might be part of the problem. So that means Sony's getting the lion's share of the profits there. On top of that, the hashtag Save Spider-Man has been trending on Twitter. So we have boycott Sony and hashtag Save Spider-Man. That's good. I'm glad to see that side of it. It's just not just fans either, as Jeremy Renner, a.k.a. Hawkeye, not Hawkman, as I said in another video back in March, has publicly demanded that Spider-Man stay in the MCU. Yeah, he really should. It's like ride this out and then go your own way. So no additional information. I got one more article I want to peruse. So this is from independent.co.uk. Sometimes you have to go to the UK to figure out what the heck's going on in this country. Marvel reportedly won't produce any further Spider-Man films after Disney and Sony failed to come to an agreement on financing for the franchise, leading fans to boycott the latter. I would still aim it at both of them. The studios were apparently unable to reach, because the phase 4 is going to go fully woke. So if you have not been completely aware of the wokeness in the previous, phase 3, all of phase 3, it was slowly being turned up. It's really going to be bad in phase 4. So anyway, because I think the Spider-Man movie would do okay in phase 4. The next Spider-Man movie. But I don't think it's going to do as well. I even if they came to an agreement, I don't feel that most of these movies are going to do as well. It's going to be more along the lines of Iron Man 3 as far as returns. 50-50 co-financing agreement, and Sony refused according to... So it looks like they wanted a financial agreement to 50-50. So if Marvel was footing the bill, so essentially Sony's footing the bill, and then not getting, they got to be getting, well, it's got to be 5% of the profits. They got to be getting all their money back. They wouldn't be doing this. If not, if they're only getting 5% of the gross, then yeah, that may be also why Disney's cooking its books. Disney was not interested in continuing in current terms where Marvel receives in the range of 5% of first dollar gross. Oh, there we go. In the range of 5% of first dollar gross. Wow. That's bad. Because I don't know how they'd make their money back on 5%. Because he's thinking, $1 billion, you get, because you don't get all that. Some of that goes to theaters and stuff like that. Who served as creative lead in the two latest Spider-Man movies will not have the same role in the next two movies. You can find a rundown of everything we know about Tom Holland, potentially even the MCU. I'm sure, and another fan ad of Spider-Man has been amazing in the MCU, Far From Home, $1 billion. Now, unfortunately, none of these articles have any in-depth about what the current deal is other than the 5%. But if they're only getting 5% of the gross, I don't know how they're making any money, because that $1 billion, 5% is $50 million. And these things are about 120 to 150 million to make. You figure at least another 100 million on advertising. These things could easily cost 300 million total all in. And you'd have to get 50% of the $1 billion gross to really, 30% to break even. So 5%, yeah, this might, okay. Well, I'm going to have to amend my statement. If this is true and my math is right and what I'm thinking of how things are going, then yeah, Sony is, they're really shitting the bed here. And the proof will be in the pudding when they come out with another movie and it drops a lot, because the tie into the MCU really helped these movies. Plus, I thought they were well written. They had some of the, I'm not a big fan of them. I'm still like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies better, but they are a heck of a lot better than the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Those were just atrocious. And not only, horrible special effects and everything, but really, really bad writing. And the writing in the MCU has been getting steadily worse. And it's become more spectacle, but I think in part because of the number of characters in them and all those personalities. And it really was building to a big war, right? So as much as I have to go, oh my God, they're fighting again, that's what it was building to. And I think Civil War was the worst offender of that. And there was a lot of stuff there that should have been between he and Bucky that it would have sold that movie to me more, especially when you get to the first Infinity War. No, it was Civil War. So it was the not Black Soldier. So Winter Soldier was the one that really started to really push me really far away. I was burned out by Iron Man 3, and then Winter Soldier. I was like, oh my gosh, this is just the same. This is Captain America 2, again. I know it's a Captain America movie, but it was the same story, and it didn't need to be told, and Bucky really shouldn't be alive. But Civil War, there's a lot going on between Captain America and Iron Man that should have been fleshed out with debates and maybe small quibbles and fights and arguments. But by then, these things have become, beat 'em up spectacles, and your typical popcorn audience is going to get bored and not pay attention. There really should have been a lot more of that mind play going on between the two of them. Unfortunately, it was very little. And that's part of what it was like. Yeah, this movie is dull because all it is fighting. So anyway, if that's true and my math is right, then yeah, Sony is. So yeah, I'll stand correct. I'll amend my statement as I started to say before I interrupted myself. Boycott Sony. I still would boycott Disney too, because they're a part of this problem. And let's get back to good storytelling. Let's make the spectacle not the main thing. Let's just make it an add-on and make the story much better and see how that goes. But I can see why fans are upset. But that would mean like Sony's getting 95% of the gross, or they're getting 95% of the profits. I don't know. I don't know how you make an arrangement like that. Sony's got to be putting some money up, surely. I can't imagine. So $1 billion, they're probably only getting about 70% of that or less, all told, after, especially the international sales. They don't get all that. But let's just say 70 for a nice round number, so $700 million. If Sony is getting 90% of that, that's insane. And if that's really the way it's going, that's just that's just insane. It just is insane. But at Sony, and that would not surprise me at all. These companies get large like this by really just cheating everybody they can. See it in software industry, Oracle and Microsoft, IBM, they're all cheats, especially Oracle, Microsoft, Google. We see it all the time. So anyway, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think this is the end of the MCU, or what does it mean for Phase 4? With no Iron Spider-Man, as it were, you're going to have a very pale Avengers with Captain Marvel leading it. We may have to have Thor come back in as a bit more active in Phase 4, or I think you fold the Guardians of the Galaxy into the Avengers a bit more. Maybe as part of their standalone movie, then they get folded back in. Black Panther as well. And I think that you can't have the Guardians run off and be by themselves in somewhat tied in movies. We know we're gonna get a female Thor. I know they don't like saying that, but that's what it is. And it's the actress. This is where having the choice of actors for Jane is really poor, and that's going to show unless they do some kind of CGI to her like Hulk or something. But we'll see. Only time will tell. Sony could always change their mind. They could because the cooler heads could prevail in a couple weeks. If they do a standalone and it doesn't work, they could always come back and say, hey, yeah, let's talk. Of course, then Disney would have more cards in their favor, and maybe it's a 60-40 split. But if it's true, it would not surprise me at all. And that Sony being crooked there, but who knows? It's two behemoths battling it out, and they're both, as far as business practices, both of them have much to be desired in the morals department. All right, thanks for stopping by. Thanks so much for clicking like, and we will see you next time. Goodbye. Stop. All right, I can't hear myself. A little more. All right, 3, 2, 1.